Hello, hello, my dear Web3 enthusiasts. This is Max speaking, and welcome to the new episode of Synopsis. Today, I'm excited to host an interview with Ron Bodkin, CEO and founder of Theoriq. And please welcome. Ron is here for the first time. So, warm greetings and more thumbs up. Hello, Ron. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you, Max?
Likewise, thank you. So, see you're in a positive mood, and it tells me that the discussion is going to be hot. So we have a bunch of questions prepared, and yeah, a small disclaimer for our audience. So, I think everyone is aware of the current state of the market, and I do hope that everyone is safe at these times. And today we will put all this noise a little bit aside and speak about more other trends than joyful rides of Bitcoin. So let's begin with the first introductory question. So, Ron, could you please introduce theoric and collaborative autonomous intelligence? So, actually, it seems like you started the AI agent narrative long before it became a major Web3 trend as of now.
Yeah, absolutely. As a little bit of background for me, I've been working as an entrepreneur in an AI for a long time, whether it was leading engineering and research in an ad tech AI company, QuantCast. Grew to a multi-hundred-million-dollar revenue, or starting a company, Think Big Analytics, and selling it to Teradata, where I ended up leading AI, or being responsible for AI in the CTO office in Google Cloud, or building an engineering team and scaling the infrastructure for hundreds of researchers at Vector Institute. So, the founding team were all AI veterans. So we were already excited by the trends in LLMs. And we felt that what was really important as AI had a bigger and bigger impact was to embrace the Web3 vision of decentralization and community ownership rather than letting a few billionaires control the AI future. So in early 22, when we were determined to build at the intersection of AI and Web3, it wasn't a widely held belief that that was an important intersection. Most people in Web3 didn't see the relevance of AI at the time, but we were convinced that it was going to be important, right? And certainly at the moment that ChatGPT came out, we really said, okay, well, how does this apply in Web3? And we felt that you were going to see it used in specialized ways. Seen throughout my career that what really matters a lot in AI isn't just the underlying model, but the system. Now you had these very general purpose models. We believed that building agents, specialized systems to do useful things was going to be incredibly important in Web3. And we built some initial agents working with partners like Space and Time. Then we started to build an in-depth analytics collective of agents, and that experience led us to believe that building collectives of agents that work together, that coordinate complex interactions and empower anyone to share their knowledge with building great agents was going to be the future. So that's really where it came from, and we've been building in this space 2.5 years, and well over a year with a focus on agents. So yeah, this is, I think, why we had such a strong sense that agents were going to be important, because we had seen the trends and we were excited about how it could apply in Web3.
Well, cool. So thanks for the introduction, and I see how setting up the clear goals helps you to actually forecast the real trends coming. Okay, so the next thing I would like to know also a little bit introductive. So we know that you, Ron, are also the CEO of ChainML, and Theoriq is its base layer. Will ChainML launch new products besides Theoriq, or will you develop the ecosystem under the Theoriq brand?
Yeah, so ChainML is a labs company, and our focus is developing and supporting the Theoriq ecosystem, right? So there's now the Theoriq Foundation, which is responsible for the governance and the progressive decentralization of the protocol. But really the focus at ChainML is to be the company that develops and contributes code and supports the development of the Theoriq protocol. Obviously it's a close collaboration. I think this kind of structure has emerged in the last few years as a fairly common one in Web3, and we'll see maybe as digital assets get more and more clarity in the regulatory space, there'll be simpler structures that emerge. But for now, it's the one that is the most common.
Okay, cool. And the next thing I wanted to know is about your test net. So actually, even me as a person who is tracking closely all the news about test nets, recently I feel like I'm drowning in this news. Like every day, some new test net is going live, and I just physically unable to follow all of them. And unfortunately, I still did not have a chance to interact with the testnet of Theoriq. So could you please tell us what can users do on your testnet, and also who are actually your users?
Yeah, I mean, so we've had a lot of excitement and engagement in our test net. We've had almost 300,000 different users interact with it since we launched it just a little over 2 months ago. We're seeing about 500,000 interactions a day as users interact with a variety of agents. We have agents in there around DeFi for doing things like investment planning and tapping into the meta on Twitter. We've got agents in there to understand and participate in restaking and eigenlayer. We have prediction markets, polymarket data and forecasting events agents, right? Those are some of the more popular ones, as well as, education agents to help people learn more about Web3 in general, right? So there's a variety of agent collectives in the test net, and so that's been very exciting. And I think one of the things that we see is that there's a range of users, but for example, I was really struck by conversations that I was having at DevCon in Bangkok, where a lot of people would say, "Oh, I've been interacting and trying out a lot of the different AI agents, and the depth of knowledge and the accuracy of the agents in the Theoriq protocol, that are available through our Infinity Studio interface." Is really the best, right? So we're seeing that. At the same time, we're also seeing a lot of builders excited to contribute agents, and we're definitely having some good discussions with some of the other leading protocols and agents, whether it be looking at Eliza, the community for open source agent development and how that can integrate and leverage that with our protocol, looking at cookie.fun as a rich source of data for agents, and likewise virtuals as an interesting place for people to execute, and integrate their agents. So, I think there's a lot more coming in the new year as we see how we can integrate the protocol, and it's like what we think is as there's more and more adoption of agents elsewhere, it's really increasing the need for agent coordination. And the first revision of agent coordination in the broader ecosystem has been agents tweeting at one another, but we think that you need contracts and more structure around it, and the ability to scale, so you don't just have tweeting as the sole mechanism for agents to coordinate, which is probably insufficient, and also not really embracing the ethos of a truly decentralized protocol, right? Where you're subject to a centralized party that decides who can do what and what to charge and how they can interoperate. So we think it's important to have an open protocol as the communication backbone for agents.
Awesome, thank you. So now I have kind exchanged the images of our audiences, and could you also tell us what are the use cases that create the biggest value on Theoriq?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing the amount of value ramp up, right? So people being able to do analysis for investments and get quick information to take action, people able to learn about and participate in restaking, people being able to investigate and identify where there's, big discrepancies between where a prediction market is priced and what an informed AI forecast can produce. All of those things together, I think are meaningful opportunities for value. What we're seeing is there's a trend, right? Where in this first test net, there's been a lot of agents that are informational and people still sort of having done their research, take action. The next stage we think is going to be simplifying the execution, right? And we think that's going to create even more value as agents do more to automate trading. We think that's going to also be a journey where one step will be a lot of people would still like the agent to prepare and propose and say, hey, here's a trade you can execute, say yes. And then the next phase will be, you know what? I'm just going to give the agent, delegate funds and have it manage it for me, whether it be like buying into a DAO or simply, delegating a wallet for me only that the agent is managing. But, I think over time, those kinds of investment use cases are going to be high value. But, obviously, there's also going to be high value use cases in domains like marketing and software development, security audits, and project management, right? There's just such a range of use cases where agents are going to be useful. But, I think starting with DeFi and prediction markets are sort of obvious initial use cases that really leverage the value of agents to coordinate some of the hard and increasingly challenging problems in crypto, especially as we see, more and more tokens, more and more chains, more and more complexity. Agents can do a lot to simplify and in fact mitigate risk.
Awesome, thank you. So pretty details. And what about the mainnet actually? So when are you gonna launch it, and what new features will it bring?
Yeah, I think it's such a Precambrian explosion of activity in the market that, our roadmap was to launch mainnet early next year. And there are a few things that we certainly are building towards, like no code builder to make it easy for anyone to create agents and then be able to track them to simplify coordination of agents. But at the same time, I'd say that I think our learnings, the market is moving so fast that, I think we're in much more of a dynamic mode, right? That we were building way ahead of the market to a very much a roadmap and based on just user feedback from our environment. But there's so many more builders building agents and users using agents now that it's even more of a dynamic market. So our roadmap is even more dynamic. And, while we still aim for mainnet early next year, I think the path there, the roadmap will probably change some. But I think ways for agents to transact, being able to, we think one of the big needs is to be able to make it smooth to scale from one-to-many coordination on Twitter to coordination in smaller groups and into individual interactions, as well as to leverage. We've done so much work around planning so that agents can use other agents efficiently without having been pre-engineered to work together, and then ways of assessing and measuring the quality of response so that you can dynamically select the right agents. We've done a lot of work on those things, so bringing those into the mainnet are going to be really important as well.
Awesome. So a lot of big things coming up next year, which is actually very, very close already. And for sure, 2025 will be the year of AI. Actually, if 2024 wasn't it. So could you tell us what are the current trends in AI agents? Should we pay more attention to maybe, and what will be all the radars at on 2025?
Yeah, well, certainly in 2024, I think we've seen AI agents explode. Web3 AI agents, have multiple billion-dollar valuation technologies and agents in the AI agent space in Web3, which is ahead of Web2, right? People in Web2 are saying, when will we see the first billion-dollar AI agent? It's like, you're not paying attention. It's already happened, right? So Web3 is ahead. At the same time, what we're seeing is the underlying technologies are really racing ahead to enable agents to be more and more effective, right? So like all of the leading model developers, whether it be OpenAI or Google or Anthropic or Meta, creating open models or building better planning and tool use and programming skills. And these are all capabilities that agents can leverage to be better and better, do more and more sophisticated things. And I think that's going to be the big shift is the level of autonomy. How much can an agent accomplish? How much can it do with what level of reliability, right? So right now, you tend to have agents that have relatively short leash and people give feedback in order to get them to do useful things, right? A lot of times what you'll see is agents that are interacting on social media, they still have some guardrails, and humans are still approving their posts and so on. So of course it's possible to do it all autonomously, but the reliability isn't necessarily there. But that's going to go way up in the next year, and like the ability for collectives of agents working together to do complicated tasks is going to go way up. The other thing I think is really worth watching. I mean, two things, I guess. One is, the dramatic improvement in programming ability of AI agents, and programming ability lets them do anything else, right? So writing programs to do specific things that you need, right? So like just last week, OpenAI previewed their latest O3 model, and they're now up to 80% accuracy roughly on this SWE-bench benchmark, which is saying like how good is an AI model at sort of interacting and solving a real world programming challenge. At the start of the year, a company Devon or a product Devon came out that people were amazed it got to 10%. So we've gone from basically computers couldn't solve this task to nearly 80% by the end of the year, right? So programming skills are just going through the roof on AI models, right? That capability is going to allow agents to do so many things, because underlying a lot of what you want agents to do are APIs, and writing programs to use those APIs is going to make agents incredibly powerful. Now, the other thing that's happening is, starting with Anthropic, but now also Google and OpenAI are building this technology. It's making it so that agents can use a computer, right? And so we think that's going to be really big change, that people will be able to show an agent what to do. It can interact on a computer, take actions so that even if there isn't a good API, it can just interact through a website. I think that's going to also just massively expand what can be done with agents and accelerate adoption, right? So we, put those together, and you're just going to have so much more ability for anyone to create high quality agents. And I think the big thing that's going to happen next year is we're going to see agents coordinating a lot more, and coordinating for things like allowing agents to trade with one another, having more efficiency in trading, allowing, variety of strategies for how one might want to manage funds, trade-offs between risk and return, right? So we think that next year we're going to really see a lot of funds in crypto traded through agents. And I think actually you're going to see that initial use case around agents for trading in crypto be sort of the foundation for building the infrastructure for using agents for a wider variety of tasks in the economy built on blockchain rails.
Wow, that was hot. And actually, yeah, I'd like to make a small note for our viewers here. So it's hard to believe in for me that Ron was not prepared actually for this interview. I shared the list of questions right when we were at Zoom already, and how much information goes out from just one, I would say, a regular question about the trends. And so thanks for that. I'm really inspired to host this discussion with such an expert and enthusiast. Well, just bravo for me here. And okay, moving on, getting back on track. So you mentioned in the previous answer some kind of competition between Web 2 and Web 3. So I cannot but ask this question also from your background. So as far as I know, you worked at Google, and the question is, will you ever work for corporations again, or is it Web3 only from now on?
Yeah, I definitely don't plan to go work at big tech again, right? I'm like Google. I mean, I really think the supporting community-based governance, supporting a better future for AI. I don't think I can have a positive impact in the same way by working at a big company like that, as opposed to, embracing the Web3 ethos and really building something where there's open source and innovation around governance. I think as AI continues to move forward rapidly, to me, important thing is like how do we build in the right kind of feedback mechanisms so that things go well, right? So like how do you have sources of robust sources of reputation for AI agents? How can you, do the research around safety and ensuring that agents are not deceptive or, behaving badly, how do you, especially, in the coordination layer, create the right incentives so that agents that behave pro-socially, that behave well, are rewarded, right? I mean, this is sort of the trick in human society is that you want to have incentives so people who play by the rules get ahead and people that cheat and act badly, go to jail and don't so that there are incentives to do the right thing, right? And I think you have the exact same challenge around agents, right? Like if you have a lawless environment, then there'll be a lot of incentives for people to cheat and for agents to cheat and to do bad things if they can simply benefit, right? So you need to create pro-social governance. I think that's something that can be best done in Web3. Whereas, like, I don't see a lot of the Web2 giants, and they're fighting for dominance with their trillion-dollar market caps. I don't see a lot of them, trying to create those incentives. They pay lip service to safety, but then they race ahead and with little thought to how to actually create a healthier ecosystem. It's funny. And some of that I was talking with um, a leader in AI safety at Google about like what they were going to do about what people building agents on their APIs did and how people building the APIs would, to avoid abuse. And the first instinct was to say, oh, well, that's for the product teams like YouTube to address. It's like, such an internal thinking at Google that thinking about third parties building on their APIs wasn't even sort of top of mind. They were thinking about only internal Google products and how they would behave responsibly. It's like you have to think about the bigger ecosystem, but it's also, I think, indicative of one of the sort of the dystopian aspects that most of the big Web2 companies are squarely thinking about building drop-in replacement workers, right? This idea that they'll create universal agents that will do everything and there's that they will basically control all of the workers of the future, right? That those will be provided and rented out by a few monopolists. Now we believe that that there's a lot for individuals to still offer in an agentic future, and that teaching what you know to an agent so it can capture your unique special sauce and make it so it's reflective of your unique talents is a more promising future. And we think that it will outcompete the big monopolists, but it's certainly the direction they're going and one that I find disturbing.
Well, thank you. So Blade Runner and Cyberpunk has never been so close as of now. And to continue the topic of competition now within the Web3, so could you tell us who are the competitors of Theoriq, if there are any, and how do you outpace them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we haven't seen a lot of people that are really focusing on the coordination layer for multiple agents to work together. I mean, I'd say like you do see folks like Autonomous who really started at a very different place. Rather than building agents based on large language models, they started by building automation scripts for treasury management, but sort of building towards that goal, but of having agents working together. But I think it's very different starting from a more generic place rather than where we've designed around you have language understanding agents that can coordinate and communicate in natural language as a foundation for how our protocol works and does coordination. But they'd be an example. I think another is Morpheus, which is also agent coordination in some sense. But again, I think like I'd say Morpheus probably they're much more developing sort of foundational components, but I think a little bit less visible on the coordination aspect. But I'd say that those are probably a couple of fairly similar kind of protocols to what we're building. I'd say though there's also a lot of people building protocols that are very complementary, right? So when we talk to folks like Sphere One or Brian or Hey Elsa or Toby who are building agents, Wayfinder that are building, agents that can take action on chain. They can actually be very complementary with the kind of coordination logic that we're able to provide in Theoriq.
Awesome, thank you. So pretty detailed. And Yeah, we're getting closer to the end of today's discussions, unfortunately for me. But yeah, recently in 99% of all the interviews we host, it always comes to regulations, even without me asking it directly. So at this point, I'd like to ask it from you, Ron. So what are the regulations the AI industry lacks the most?
Yeah, I think the big thing is we should have more regulation in the sense of requiring people developing frontier models, the most capable models that have new capabilities that are not well understood, to have done good safety testing, with a clear risk model, to be able to determine, what are potentially catastrophic risks that those models might face, right? Like we're already seeing some of the most advanced models in the company's own assessments at medium risk for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear (CBRN) weapons, right? So weapons of mass destruction, like enabling people to do that. Medium is, for example, in OpenAI scoring, it means that that they that an expert could be facilitated in developing such weapons. But as you get into high risk and it starts to enable people that otherwise couldn't create such weapons, obviously nobody wants to see the proliferation of technology that can be used, in to create weapons of mass destruction for large numbers of people, right? As an example, right? So, but how do we hold the line on this and some of these other potential catastrophic risks, right? I think it's important to have a requirement, a legal requirement to assess the risks that it be done before release, right? We're seeing some sloppiness where you look at OpenAI just released their O1 model, and comments online suggest that the analysis they did in their system card wasn't actually on the model they released. It was on a weaker version, which is like, you kind of cut the corners on the tests you said you'd do in your preparedness framework. That's not good, right? Then you get other companies like, what Meta's done in terms of releasing open weight models. I won't call it open source because it's not really. There's a lot that they've developed doing in those models that's not open source, but these open weight models, it's enabling a lot of people to develop things, which has some real upsides for the community, but it also is higher risk, right? So the models that we have today are not significant risks. So I think it's been a huge positive, but how do you ensure that such a release is done in a safe way if you discover, right? We're discovering even now, like people get better at creating agent frameworks that make AI models do more capable things with new data and so on. But when you have an open weight release, there's no taking it back. It's out there. So if there's a risk or a problem, so I would argue that the mode of determining what the risks are needs to be even more rigorous when something is released in that way, where there's no shutting it down. There's no ability to add additional screens and checks before calling through an API. So I think, requiring that kind of testing, requiring transparency, whistleblower protection, third-party audits, third-party testing requirements. I think all of those things make sense so that we continue to understand the risk landscape. I don't think we've seen yet the kind of risks that would warrant, heavier weight regulation. On the other side, what I think is unfortunate is we're seeing just a flurry of regulations around AI pass, certainly in US states and, in Europe and elsewhere, that sort of don't mitigate a lot of risk, but create a lot of burden and slow the technology down, right? So like various versions of needing to have fingerprinting to determine if a generated image is AI generated, and various forms of requiring AI voice to identify itself, and so on. And like, maybe a lot of these things are reasonable sort of best practices, but writing them into law certainly can create a lot of burden. And these sort of uh, this proliferation of regulations tends to do is it tends to entrench incumbents who can comply with them and create a lot of a lot of shackles, a lot of challenges for startups that want to comply. So especially they think about it like you release something in a permissionless way, and now you could be accessed in dozens of states and across many countries, and like having lots and lots of these regulations can really harm the innovation and just entrench monopolies. So, we've already seen some of this that even big companies like Meta and Apple have held back important releases in the EU because they've said like this, we don't know if we can get our AI technology to comply with the regulations. So, I think we should be focused on regulating against the most important risks, which to me are these kinds of longer term, but really high impact risks as AI becomes more and more capable, and not put a lot of burden on something that's going to create so much economic value in the near term where there isn't that level of risk.
Well, listening to the answers regarding regulations has never been so interesting, and want to see if AI can create its own regulations which are suitable for it. So,
One other thing that I would add on top of regulation is I also think, government could do a lot to fund the basic research around control and safety for AI. It's a public good. And rather than expecting private for-profit companies to fund all that research, we have governments that do fund basic research for money things. And like I couldn't imagine something more important as AI continues to take off in this exponential curve than that we invest, right? I think it's a great thing, to have nonprofit contributions in that space and important for any commercial company to do their part, but the government should be doing a lot more in that space as well.
well, AI is a public good, yeah. So sounds um very reasonable. And yeah, so this discussion today was super hot, and we have come to one last traditional question for our audience. And actually, at the New Year's Eve, it gets even more symbolism. So, Ron, could you please share some piece of advice with our viewers? So it might be addressed to some exact part of the audience, or it might be some universal, not a financial one, just anything you think is valuable for people to hear right now. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's, important time to be staying on top of AI agents, especially in Web3, like track what's going on, with protocols like ours, engage with them, track some of the agents. Like, it's going to be such a change in the way we operate in Web3 and the way you can succeed and work. So, no matter what your role, being really engaged, testing things out, participating. I think there's huge opportunities, and the space is just changing on a daily basis. So it's really important to stay on top of the trends and to be in the lead and think about how you can benefit in your own work and in your own life by engaging more, right? And certainly being part of the communities. There's some great communities as well.
Awesome. The best finish of such a discussion I could think of. So, guys, you heard everything. Stay engaged and you'll be happy. Well, that's it for today. Actually, Ron, thank you very much for joining in. Really enjoyed this time. So it just flies so rapidly. The discussion was very insightful and interesting. So hope to see you in more episodes.
Thank you, Max. Great talking to you. Bye
Yeah.
now.
And thanks for our audience for watching till the end. So stay engaged and stay tuned. Subscribe to Synopsis. And yeah, see you in the new episodes. Bye bye, everyone.